After we finished from explaining the controlling the schedule, we've looked into the tools, we've looked into the AVM formulas that is involved in scheduling. We looked for the best practices. We had overview about these case studies where the best practices were applied. Now it's the time to move to control the costs process. Cost control is the cornerstone of the financial management and project execution. It involves monitoring the expertise, or the spendings of the project and comparing the actual costs with the planning budget or the planned budget. Also implementing the corrective actions when there's a variances occur. The key points we are gonna cover on this, let's say, slide, we'll talk about how the cost control ensures the project stays within the approved budget, also the critical for financial health and stakeholder confidence. Also, the importance of cost control as it directly impacts the project profitability and success. Let's now first understand its key ITTOs. So, understanding the ITTOs of the cost control is critical for the effective implementation of these. For example, using the earned value management (EVM) as technique which allows the project manager to assess the performance through indicators like the cost performance index. If you recall, we have the SPI or the Schedule Performance Index. Now we have the Cost Performance Index, which is known as the CPI. Also, the outputs such as the cost forecasts and change requests if needed, which guide the decision making to ensure that the project remains financially valuable. So, the key inputs we have here is the project management plan, project document, including the cost management, also the estimation or the basis of estimates, project funding requirement, the work performance data, the OPAs, and the tools and techniques. Here we have the expert judgment, data analysis, to complete performance index. We are going to cover also the output. Here we have is the work performance information, which is useful information compared to the planned and actual, let's say, costs, cost forecast, change requests. So all of these we are gonna discuss each of them in more in depth in the next sessions to understand how these tools and outputs can help you, let's say, controlling your project costs in a more efficient way. But what exactly, first, let's understand the importance of having a cost control on project and as one of these key processes that is involved at the project management guide. So the importance of cost control cannot be just overstated in project management. These importance, it helps you by preventing the budget overruns. So you as a project manager, if you have a strong control and will control on your project costs, you will prevent budget overruns and ensure the financial discipline. Comparing the let's say the approved budget or the allocated budget of your project with the actual spendings. Also, it maintains the stakeholder trust and confidence. You as a project manager, if you can keep the project on time and in cost without causing any overruns in terms of the budget or schedule or timeline, this will maintain the stakeholder trust and will increase the confidence between you and the stakeholders. For instance, let's say in a marketing campaign project, think of exceeding the allocated budget that could, let's say, impact the ROI or the return of investment, leading to a loss of stakeholder trust. So think as this scenario. So think of having always a regular cost review to ensure that the spending is aligned with the project goals and with the baseline. And that will foster the accountability and promoting the financial success of your project. Now let's understand each of them one by one. So preventing the cost overruns. Preventing the cost overruns requires a proactive measures. You as a project manager, you can use baseline to monitor the deviations. Think of the cost management or the budget where you have identified or at the planning phase. This is your baseline where you have established your baseline or the cost baseline. So you need to use this baseline to monitor the deviation. So you compare the actual with the baseline and then you understand the deviation. Also, apply this contingency reserves for unplanned expenses, especially when you are dealing with risks. We talked about how you allocate some of these contingency planning or contingency costs to face these the risks in case if they occur or to mitigate these risks. And also to prevent these cost overruns, ensure that you have regularly review and update the cost estimates, which is part of the progressive elaboration, which things get more clear when they come near. Let's say an example here in a case where there is a construction project, maintaining a detailed cost baseline and tracking actual spendings against against the baseline, it helps by identifying the potential overruns early. Also allocating the contingency reserves for unexpected events like supply chain delays, so that will ensure the project continues without disrupting the budget. Now let's talk about this important concept of cost variance or CV analysis. Cost variance analysis is a key technique for identifying the budget deviation. If you recall that when we talked about the schedule variation, we have here is the cost variation, which is also a key technique to identify the budget deviation. On the other hand, we have the schedule deviation, which we covered on controlling the schedule, which it highlights the schedule deviation. But this time we're going to discuss about the budget deviation, which is the cost variance. So the cost variance analysis, it measures the difference between the planned and actual costs. And you can calculate the cost variance, which is the CV, by um, um, having the EV or the earned value, let's say cost, minusing it from the actual cost, which is the earned value minus the actual cost. And this will help you identifying the areas that requiring you to have a corrective actions. Let's take an example here. For instance, in a software development, let's say project, if the earned value is 50,000, which is the EV, and the actual cost is 60,000, which is the, say, AC or the actual cost. The cost variance here is minus 10,000, and that indicates that there's a budget overruns by, let's say, a 10% or a 12% or 15%. But here, the value here you have is minus 10,000. That means that you have a budget issue or overrun. And such insights with negative value enables the project managers to focus on areas that need an immediate corrective actions, ensuring a financial discipline. Also, the forecast cost for better control. So also these formulas are gonna appear and the AVM formulas. So we already have covered the AVM in terms of schedule. Now we are again focusing on the, let's say, the cost related forecasts of the cost. So forecasting, as you know, plays a vital role in cost control. You may use the estimate at completion, which is the AAC for total project cost, which we are going to cover in more in depth and have more example about how to find the estimate at completion, which is the AAC for the total project cost. Also, the estimate to complete in terms of budget. So, estimate to complete is the ETC, which helps predicting the remaining expenses towards the project completion. So, think of there is a project where you have 10,000, you have spent 7,000. So, the ETC or the remaining expenses, it will measure how much you have spent during the project and it will help predicting the remaining expenses based on the trend of the project spendings. And the forecasting cost for the better control, we say that it ensures the accurate financial planning in terms of budgeting and let's say monitoring the cost of the project. Let's say that there is a large scale IT project. Calculating the estimate at completion, or the EAC, estimate at completion, based on the current performance trends, which provide a realistic picture of the final budget. On the other hand, you have the estimate to complete, which is the ETC, and that will help you planning the resources for the upcoming phases by utilizing the AAC and analyzing the or reviewing the performance trends to have a realistic picture on the final, let's say, budget or the final cost of the project. And all of these formulas or all of these calculations techniques, it will help you ensuring that the project is financially prepared for future challenges. Let's look into these tools and techniques for the cost control. We talked about the earned value management that integrates the cost and the schedule and scope. We have seen how earned value management in terms of schedule management. Now we have covered the CPI, or the cost performance index. We've seen how it could be calculated. Also the cost variance, which is the CV. We also have talked in the previous slide on the AAC and the ETC, which talks about the estimate at completion in terms of cost, also the estimate to complete to complete the project. So the other tools here you can use or utilize is the project management software, or let's say these softwares which aids in real time for cost tracking. You may also utilize this trend analysis to predict the future cost behavior by utilizing and understanding the current performance and the previous performance trends. Based on that, it can shape a trend. That trend will help you to predict the future cost behavior. So again, tools like the AVM and project management software, it simplifies the cost control, also the trend analysis. Let's now take one of these real world examples of cost control. In a scenario where is a renewable energy project and managing the cost in this renewable energy project, the unforeseen challenges like the equipment delays has threatened the to escalate the costs. And the approach here, by implementing the AVM and understanding, let's say the cost variance and the cost, let's say, performance index, it shows that it has a negative value, and the project manager here has identified the areas of inefficiencies and reallocated the resources effectively. And by having a regular cost reviews and the AVM usage and contingency planning, the contingency reserve were used strategically to address the unexpected expenses, also enabling the team or the project to be completed within the approved budget. So the lesson here on this real world example, it talks about the importance of having a regular cost reviews and also utilizing the AVM to understand the cost variance and the cost, let's say, performance index. Also, the importance of having a contingency planning to, let's say, to mitigate the risk of these, let's say, equipment delays, which could threaten the project costs and the project delivery. And by applying these techniques and tools, it has delivered the project within the budget despite of these unforeseen challenges. Let's now talk about these important challenges in cost control. Cost control is not without challenges. Some of these challenges in cost control, cost control, involve like unforeseen events impacting the cost baselines, also the resistance to change in financial plans, as well as ensuring the stakeholder buy-in in budget adjustment. So all of these challenges can be, let's say, an obstacle to you when you are handling the cost control process. So think of having a mitigation plan to all of these, let's say, challenges, and I think in a way that you address these issues that requires you the flexibility in the financial planning and effective communication with the stakeholders to gain the approval for necessary budget adjustment and contingency planning. The cost control here, as a summary, we talked it's a vital for financial success of any project. By leveraging the techniques like AVM, the variance analysis, and forecasting, trend analysis, and keeping the stakeholder informed about these cost variances, project managers ensure that the spendings or the expenditures are aligned with the project objectives. Also, to ensure to keep or maintain the financial health and project alignment, we talked also about these techniques, the variance analysis, the forecasting, which drive the informed decision. Also looked at one of these real-world application, which highlights the importance of proactive cost management, utilization of these tools and techniques to control your costs in an efficient way.